Welcome to the Record Player, everybody. I am Scott, as always. Today, I'm so excited to have with us a man who needs no introduction, but we will give him one anyway because it would be rude not to. He is an award-winning singer-songwriter and musician who has graced stages, radios, and turntables all across the world as a solo artist and as the keyboardist and singer for one of the most successful bands in rock music history, Styx. It is, of course, Mr. Lawrence Gowan, who is joining us on TRP. How are you, Lawrence?
I'm very well, thank you, Scott. Thank you for the introduction. They're always nice to get.
you get to relive your accomplishments that way. Right?
Yeah, you hear it and you try not to look too embarrassed and kind of like, called up to the front of the classroom. But here we
are. Lawrence and I have a lot in common. We are both born in Glasgow, Scotland. Both came to Canada as young youths.
Yes, youths.
Music is obviously in both of our lives. You are a member of Styx. I am a fan of Styx. So really, that's where the similarities end. You're an accomplished piano player. I can say the word piano, and that's pretty much it. I've even sat at a few of them. You are right now out touring with Styx. You're on a break right now. You go back next week. Is that right?
Yeah. What we've been doing this summer is we do 3 weeks on, 1 week off, so that we don't entirely lose the entire summer as far as our own summer activities of water polo, etc. So yeah, we've now done 1, 2, 3. What have we done? The first 2 full legs of the tour we've done. The June shows, the July shows. We begin the August shows in 2 days. We start up now on the East Coast, Virginia Beach, and go up through New York, and then we're coming to Toronto. Actually, the only Canadian show on this summer tour. It's the big blockbuster tour. We have Loverboy and REO Speedwagon and Styx, and we'll be in Toronto on the 16th of August. So I'm looking forward to that.
Budweiser stage, getting home.
Yeah. But I still call it Ontario Place.
So do I.
I still, every time I go there, I'm looking for the revolving stage. But much to my dismay, it's been buried under the weight of Budweiser.
So sadly.
Yes.
This is what you're touring with right now. This is Crash of the Crown.
Crash of the Crown. Yes. Thank you very much for having the vinyl handy. That's great.
I bought this the minute it was released.
You are a clever man.
I am. Everything sounds better on vinyl, Lawrence. The 17th studio album by the band, long time coming with COVID and everything to get through this, yes, the writing, recording, mixing, all the process of this record, and to get back out on the road. Getting back on a stage and being out there supporting a record, are you more grateful this time around? I mean, not that you weren't before, but having gone through all of this, is it more of a...
Well, you're right. There's a new level of appreciation. I mean, getting to be a musician and actually having an audience and being able to live this life is for me was everything, and for everyone else in the band. So we've always had a great underlying sense of gratitude that the universe kind of smiled upon us enough to let us do this. But yes, being deprived of something, there's nothing like being deprived of something to actually up your thirst and hunger and your desire to do it. And in the United States, they actually opened up last June to concerts. So we actually went out with the Crash of the Crown was released simultaneous with our first show.
Cool.
that was on the 12th of June in where were we? St. Augustine, Florida. And from that moment till all of these shows, you can see on the faces of the people, the moment you walk on stage, it's, there's always an excitement at the top of a show, always, yeah. But there's an extra layer of emotional release that is very palpable, at the top of these shows. And really you can feel it, and you feel it really right through the show. But nothing quite as intense as those first few moments when you feel this great re-embrace that people are that they have this vital thing back into their lives, something that's really has enriched their lives, perhaps even more than they ever imagined. But as I say, being deprived of it for a year and a half in Canada, nearly 2 years, really brings out the Pavlov's dog response to it actually beginning. So yeah, we've absolutely loved it.
But not just deprive the audience. I mean, deprived you guys. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
The excitement for you guys must be incredible.
Absolutely. Oh, well, there's nothing like, sorry, I never know how to turn off these notifications. Anyway, there's nothing like a live rock concert for the greatest, for my life, it's been the greatest form of entertainment I've ever encountered. But as a musician, music it's communication, it's a language. And if you're not speaking that language to someone eyeball to eyeball, it loses something in its power. Something's kind of taken away from it, or there's another dimension to it that is not being, you're not plugging into. And that's why I've always, the part of the music life that I've always enjoyed the most is performing live, because you feel that it's all what's the word? It's ephemeral. It's all in the moment exchange between you and an audience, and this you somehow have this collection of notes and lyrics that you're sharing and elevating to a level that you really can't quite get to if you're just entirely on your own all the time, just kind of
or doing this.
Yeah.
This record, I mentioned 17th studio record for Styx. The Mission in 2017, this album, to me sounds like it's going almost like the roots of a Styx record. It's going back to the prog sound.
Yeah,
it may not necessarily be radio friendly per se, but I don't think that's,
no.
I don't think that's what Styx fans want now.
Radio line, it is. It's funny. Here's the weird paradox. The classic rock radio, which is a strong force in every city in North America anyway, I don't know the rest of the world possibly, but it's amazing how supportive they are on their websites to new records by legacy artists that they rely upon for their existence. So we, with both the Mission and Crash to the Crown, we say basically we're just 25 years away from it eventually get on classic rock radio. And I used to say that kind of as a joke. Now I actually think there might be some credence to that, because I'm fond of saying this, but classic rock is the great musical statement of the last half of the 20th century. It's not even a disputed thing anymore. Half the audiences that we play to every night, half the audience is generally under 40 years of age. That means they weren't even born when the biggest classic rock records were made. And that's not just with Styx. When I play my Gowan shows at the end of June, when we had our week off, I went and played a string of Gowan shows from Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, and here in Ontario. And again, the same thing. When I look out, I see, why is the audience skewing younger, not older? It's a great thing to see, because they've embraced this music the same way that, the first half of the 20th century perhaps was defined by jazz and all of its permutations, swing and big band and all those things. And people, gravitated toward that and still do. And, people that weren't alive in that era, the songs that are on this jukebox are all 78s. And I'm nostalgic for 50s rock when I wasn't even around when it was being made, or, I was around when I was in diapers. So anyway, yeah, I think that kind of addresses that.
I was 10 years old when Led Zeppelin broke up, so I didn't get into Led Zeppelin until long after they were broken up. So yeah, I totally understand that.
You're a prime example, you youngster.
Thank you. I didn't get called that very often. The cohesiveness of the band is incredible on this record. It's your fourth full record with the band. When I heard, which amazes me because you've been there 22 years, so to only do 4 records in that time is pretty amazing.
Well, when I was in the band for 5 years, we did our first studio album, Cyclorama. Then we did one called Big Bang Theory, which came out before the TV show. Anyway, but long after Einstein came up with the expression. So between let's say arbitrarily, between 2004 and 2014, the music industry was in real disarray. The live aspect of it was just exploding because people were looking for things that they could not download, and real life experiences. And again, as I mentioned before, a rock concert fits the bill for that better than anything, and to my mind. And in those years, it just didn't seem like, should we spend time in the studio, and taking half the year away basically to address that, or should we keep playing over 100 shows a year around the world and going and playing all these festivals in Europe and going through Britain and playing in America and Mexico and Canada and Japan? Should we keep on doing that? And that just seemed like the logical thing for us to do. Lots of new ideas kept bubbling up, and sound checks would get really interesting because we'd have new ideas. We put out a couple of singles here and there, but it really came around in 2014 when Universal Records wanted Styx back on the label and wanted to make a new record. We realized so much has been worked out now. The music industry has become far more comfortable or adept at dealing with what the internet did to the previous paradigm, which was a locked system that they had, where they were the big four labels were the gatekeepers of the music of the world. Now they have to kind of play the new game, and they've learned how to do that quite effectively. So in 2014, we suddenly realized, I think we might be ready to make a new album. This being with Universal, who have all the catalog of Styx, this is beginning to make some sense. So we hired a producer named Willie Vankovich, who's now a member of the band, who became such a pivotal, important person, because we wanted to continue touring that much, work on the record a bit, but have someone who was off the road and producing to kind of keep pulling all the various elements together and what we needed to do. So we wound up making the Mission in 2017. About a year later, we were able to play shows in Las Vegas and Boston and Washington and New York now, where we play the Mission in its entirety, because there are that many aficionados to the record that really want to hear that record. And then when we made Crash of the Crown, again, good marketing on the part of the record company and the band, because we timed it to where it'll be released when you do your first live show after COVID. So that was, as I mentioned, last June. And within a week, Crash of the Crown went to #1 on Billboard's rock album chart. They have a separate chart now for rock albums. And it's the first time in such a short order that Styx went to #1 on a record. And so it was a good purchase on your behalf.
It was a great purchase.
To get the vinyl.
Right from the very beginning of it, right? Like right from Fight of Our Lives into A Monster. I mean, it's twists and turns, and it's a prog record. It really is, and it's amazing to me that a band that's been around as long as you guys and doing what you do can still make such a unique and creative record.
Thank you very much for saying that. Please quote yourself. When I joined Styx, I mean, it's the prog part of Styx that I was most attracted to. Right. The idea of being in a prog band. I mean, my own records there's prog elements all the way through them, but they're from the era of the 80s and the 90s, when things had to be curtailed to fit. Otherwise, people fit various radio, television formats. Otherwise, they would never be heard. So I would kind of shoehorn in all the little prog things, knowing that I have to kind of still fit within the tastes of the day. Now, the constraints of having to fit any format other than an album. An album is the format that we have to fit. Yeah. We need to put together roughly 40 minutes of music, 20 minutes per side, roughly, of a vinyl record, where the experience is you have part 1 and part 2. Part of it is the flipping over. The tactile experience of an album is an art form. It's a form of theater of the mind, or whatever you want to call it, that you have to be actively involved in. And that's why digital devices such as this, they're fantastic for the convenience of them, and we know all the great things about them. Otherwise, we wouldn't have allowed them to alter our lives so entirely, but the experience of an album and you having to be kind of that little bit involved where you have to put a needle on, you have to, you have to sit, you have to kind of turn off outside distractions and kind of fall into the mindset or the vibe of this thing for 40 minutes. It's almost like a meditation, that's a great form that I think the digital world lost in a lot of ways because of playlists.
Right.
But we love playlists. Hang on. We love playlists because that's where people discover the record. So you see, there's a great balance between the two right now.
And you guys do it on purpose. I mean, you guys put songs in order on purpose so that the listener can hear it from beginning to end. If they're, especially stuff like you guys and Genesis and things like that, right?
Like a Genesis record out of listened to out of order
makes no sense.
Seems just wrong to me. It's like when I listen to I cite this in the show. The last show I saw before the last show I was able to go and see, not our own, was Elton John, Farewell Yellow Brick Road. And I was alive and saw Goodbye Yellow Brick Road in '73, I think it was. So I saw him at both ends of that. And it's even in a concert, I feel like, no. It has to be Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleed. Then it goes into Candle in the Wind, then Benny and the Jets. That's, I want to hear it in that order. Of course, it's not in the show, but that's part of that experience. Is how you work through the record. And Genesis is another fantastic example of that. Selling England by the Pound has to start that way and has to end with cinema show. So anyway, that's part of the whole culture, quite honestly.
Anybody who says that Gowan stuff isn't prog related either is crazy. I mean, you tell me that A Criminal Mind isn't a 10-minute song that's been condensed down to whatever, right?
That's right. Yeah, it is.
Not to mention the fact that when you did Strange Animal, and this was my introduction to you when I was, this was, I saw you at Ontario Place. You mentioned Ontario Place earlier. That's where I saw you for the first time on the revolving stage.
Fantastic.
And I've seen Styx so many times. You haven't slowed down. You've still got the exact same energy level now as you did then. It's amazing.
On stage, I do. On stage, I do. I'm amazed too. When I see video, I'm like, wow, I could never do that in real life.
I don't know how the hell you do it. But sticking with that, I mean, you on this record, you had some musicians that played with Peter Gabriel come on the record. On your next record after that, you and I've always wanted to ask you how this came about, the Moonlight Desires, with working with John Anderson. And anybody who's a prog fan or a Genesis fan or any of that, yes, I mean, we're getting a chance to work with John Anderson. I've always wanted to know how that came about. How did that?
Sure, I'd love to talk about that. John Anderson was on that one. The next album with Lost Brother had Alex Lifeson was one of the guests on that one, played on the whole record. The next record had Robert Fripp. So you can really see there is a connection here between the prog world and my solo stuff prior to Styx. John Anderson was in Los Angeles at the same time that we were recording Great Dirty World. And the producer for Great Dirty World was David Tickle, who also produced Strange Animal. And Dave was asked to work a little bit. I think he mixed a couple of songs on the soundtrack for Legend, the movie Legend. And John Anderson was in the studio working with Tangerine Dream on that. And when Dave went into the studio, he played Strange Animal, just kind of listening to it, to set up the speakers, and John heard it and he liked it and said, "Who is this?" etc. And we wound up kind of having dinner together, I think that night. And he said, "Well, let me hear some of what you're working on." And so we played him a few of the songs, but he immediately started kind of riffing vocals along with the Moonlight Desires. And we had, in that week, we had anticipated putting a guitar solo in that part of the song where there's a kind of a breakdown before it hits into the out choruses. And it just dawned on us immediately, instead of a guitar solo, John's going like do 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 like a guitar.
Yeah.
Let's have him do a vocal solo. Just take a solo and have a few bars, whatever it is, 16 bars or something, where he takes a vocal solo because his voice is so, incredible.
Yeah.
And
instrumental.
yeah. And so a few days later, he came into the studio and basically just riffed it. He just riffed it like it was a guitar player doing it, or a keyboard player, or any tuba player doing any kind of solo. And I think the most beautiful thing about that was, we were all really happy with it. And I think the next day, he and I went to an LA Dodgers game at Dodger Stadium, which was, I still look at that as maybe the more surprising thing of all, because, in the 80s, particularly, I was a baseball fan because the Blue Jays were doing so well. And I was friends with Dave Steve. I'm going to drop all the names. And he, so we went to this Dodgers game together. And John, I just thought, God, I've been to so many Yes concerts. I've got every Yes album. I sang along with this guy in my parents' basement for years. I'd sing Close to the Edge pretty much every day for about a year, and I'd try to add my own little harmonies, etc. And yesterday, he just sang on one of my records. And this is an astounding thing. What a great guy.
And now you got a baseball team.
He still sounds phenomenal to this day. So lovely. Yeah.
Surreal, I'm sure, getting to work with your idols and your.
Yeah, it is.
We all know that the power that the internet can have and social media and all that. Nowadays, the trend, well, not nowadays, this past year, the trend seems to be television and film. Kate Bush Running Up That Hill becomes a massive hit again 35 years after it did it in the first place because of Stranger Things. And now all of a sudden you've got You're a Strange Animal showing up in the Jordan Peele film.
Yes.
Nope. What was that like when they approached you saying, can we use this, or did they have to? I mean, did you get that call?
Yeah, I got a message from our publishing company a few months ago that Jordan Peele wanted to use Strange Animal, and I was, very happy to hear that. Of course, I've had a lot of placements of Gowan songs over the years in various things, from the Canadian Chili Beach cartoon, and of course Degrassi Junior High, and it's been on several other uses of it in several films. There's a great movie that was made a few years ago called Side Boob, where the main character he lives a lot of his life based upon the 80s philosophies that are particularly expressed on Great Dirty World. There's a scene in the movie where he actually shows the album to this girl and says, "Do you know this album?" And so there are a lot of placements of that nature. And then, of course, there's a movie I did called Wolf Cop that I was actually in the sequel of, that used the songs. But a major blockbuster Hollywood movie like Nope is, was the #1 box office last week, is the first time that I've had something of that level. So even within a week, I noticed Jordan Peele tweeted out a faux intro to an 80s sitcom, or 80s or early 90s sitcom, where Strange Animal is the theme song of the show. I don't want to give anything away about the movie, but when he tweeted that out, within a couple of days, I noticed there were 2.4 million views of that clip of Strange Animal on his Twitter. That gets your attention really quick. And you realize, and I immediately kind of look at some people's comments on it. It's like, is this a new song? How come I've never heard this, et cetera. And then you've got Canadian people coming on there going like, what's wrong with you? You should know this. We've had it in our lives all this time. So it's very gratifying. I've always known the record was how strong it is. I've lived a whole life where I've seen it playing in concerts, and just last month playing concerts and seeing how people react to it. So on the one hand, I'm delighted. On the other hand, it's, after what I've said about all of the classic rock of the last half of the 20th century, we shouldn't be as surprised as we are when a song like Running Up That Hill, or any song from the past suddenly emerges and has just as much impact today as it ever did.
You mentioned the audience is getting younger. I mean, I'm sure this has a lot to do with it, getting those songs back out there.
Very much so. Very much so. I know that. It's great when there are cultural references like that because of film and TV, outside of the produced videos. Those cultural references tend to really underpin the connection that people have to the song, or they discover it for the first time, and suddenly now they've found a whole new avenue of dots to connect as to how the narrative of the song comes into their own personal experience.
I've asked this of a few different people over time. Do the songs ever take on a life of their own for you? I mean, do you ever hear them because they're such huge songs? Do you ever hear them and think to yourself, you know, you're singing along, wait, I wrote that, you know, like, does it ever sort of become outside the box for you?
Yeah, it is, quite frankly, you know. It's only when I'm playing them live that I feel the obvious connection, but when I hear them on the radio, you know, yeah, there's definitely kind of a little bit of an out of body thing that happens. And there's also it's funny, in the life of a record, when you're making a record, it's quite an arduous task to do. Usually the best ones are usually, there's some pain involved in the making of them, both in the writing and in the recording, because there's a lot of give and take, and whatever you want to call it. They can be flat out fights as to which way we're going to go, and those are all there's a lot of creative friction, let's call it that has to go. So initially, for the first few years, when you hear a song that you've worked on so much, it brings up a lot of that part of it, the tension and the task of getting the job done and going, I hope it's okay. But I remember experiencing, even maybe as much as 20 years ago, I remember hearing a Criminal Mind on the radio and thinking, how the hell did we get it so right? It just hit me that way, that I felt detached from it, and thought, this does stand up. It stands up next to other things that I'm hearing of that time. And you get a sense of pride, but also you feel how lucky you are that you were able to get it right, and that it did connect with people, and that people still want to come and hear it played.
We only got a minute left.
Keep going.
Yeah, we can go all day.
Yeah.
You talk about the Styx records. You're out on tour promoting those. It's been a long time since we've had a Gowan record.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but is there
No.
anything? Is there anything planned? Is there anything?
I started working on a new Gowan record. This is going to be embarrassing to say, but I started working on it around 2010, and then got really serious about it. Got into the studio. I had Tony Levin and Jerry Murata and some players from Gary Borden, some great players from around here. Phil Narrow, great singer who left the planet just a year ago. And anyway, until I have a proper block of time, I realized I really want to put this out. I really want to put this out, but until I have a block of time where I can properly promote it. So that means a break from Styx. I don't want to just throw it out there, because the danger of the internet is that things can get lost unless you're doing a lot of things like what you and I are doing that right now, Scott, where you're bringing it to people's attention. People's attention is so fragmented now that things can come and go without you ever hearing about them, and that usually comes down to poor marketing, quite frankly. So I don't want to just let it kind of drift out there and see if it happens to like a message in a bottle, so to speak. Oh, what a great title! Let me write that down.
I think it's
I'd rather have a block of time if Styx, when Styx take, say, a 6-month hiatus or something like that, and I can actually go out and do these things. I would have done it during the COVID year, quite frankly, except we spent all that time learning how to do Zoom calls, doing live streams, making Crash of the Crown, and that was difficult with using analog and digital things to kind of make it happen. So that's my excuse, and that's my long list of a dog ate my homework and I got locked away and all that sort of thing.
It took you a while to teach Tommy how to play guitar in his kitchen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is it, Crash of the Crown, latest Styx record. It is absolutely incredible. You're out touring with it now. We mentioned Budweiser Stage in August. 16th, I think, here in Toronto.
August 16th.
It's going to be great to have you home. As I said, the album is fantastic. The tour brings you home. It's been a thrill to chat with you, Lawrence. It's been an absolute amazing little bit talking about Styx, talking about your solo stuff. Thank you so much for being with us on TRP.
Scott, a fellow Scottish Canadian. I love the sound of that, and born in Glasgow.
Yep.
Do you go to Glasgow very often?
I was actually born just outside of Glasgow. I was born in Cumbernauld, which is,
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Everybody else was born in Glasgow. I haven't been back in many, many years, but my
that counts. That counts. That counts.
It's like this. It's like Brampton to Toronto, right? Cumbernauld
Yeah,
to Glasgow.
that counts. That totally counts. I'll be playing in Brampton in the Rose Theatre towards the end of the year.
Oh, great!
So it's part of Toronto.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And good luck on the rest of the tour.
All the best, man. Nice, great chatting with you. Thanks for having the vinyl, and see you somewhere up the road.
Take care, Lawrence.
Cheers. Bye now.